thinking about things, but
Yeah.
it's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
So we're not
He
excited.
sounded really happy about it.
Nice to meet you too.
Yes. Not these which are store inventory.
Yeah, we met, we have all
Quiet, right? Yes.
Thank you. I mean, really, thank you.
Yeah, that's an it's like the publication or something.
That one is for all of the artists, but this is only one of them.
maybe they'll start drinking.
Single object nouns. Things he's like obsessed with wheels and trucks and so kind of like that's about his stuff too.
One of the things that makes you realize how hardwired certain gender preferences are.
You know, we're
A little kid and you're like,
like we got stuff from all over the place. And it's, the full ring.
these are very sticky.
And I had little boys come to me.
Nothing else like
I'm not really into mermaids.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is that like there's always, everybody's always an individual.
Once you get one,
And also, it's like I don't know how much like like if we're gonna go easy, like we'll go to I don't want to like
right, of course.
but it's just like I know it's a surefire hit. So like the river is right there. You must have seen it at some point. Every time I go, it's like you're either coming in or going out. Sure. There's a hot tub across the river. It's by the water. Yeah. So there's like a train, and a boat goes by, and the helicopter comes up. Let me find out what it's Yeah, no, it's not for
identify with all of them.
like tracks. It's definitely his keywords right now. Truck, bus.
A friend of mine remarked when someone was and they had a boy, and they were like, yeah, we offered the girls the guy, we wouldn't let him have guns. He bit a toe in the shape of the guy. Because not the man.
No, I'm like, they don't live in a bubble.
Exactly.
Try to get us to play with
For some, they were protected. You know, it was like, oh, you put something in my straw for my puppy. I'm the you know, and it's not even a cuddly guy. He doesn't transfer that to the dog.
I mean, on the other hand, I had a short one, her name, yeah, maybe the girl plays. I always want to transfer her. They were more fun. They were better toys.
Yeah.
More stuff to do.
And for her, that was fun. And for me, my teddy bear was the music box. His company was like the end of the world.
Really quite I find
You really have to appreciate how because they will come back.
I mean, it's true. On the other hand,
Yeah, it's tough because it always falls on someone doing this.
anything else? Yes, it's a book.
And neutral was just here.
Do you want to contribute?
Can I buy a copy from you?
Yes, not from me though. At the cash
counter.
register. Yeah, they have them up there too.
Oh, they do. Okay.
We are in Eastern Pennsylvania.
Somewhere not New York.
Yeah. It's actually not that far.
Here.
I know people.
Would you like your contributor copies or do you want to unbutton yourself first?
Yeah, some copies for now.
So these are the store copies. I have the stock for
Some are going to film.
Oh, really?
Make your way into your seats, folks. We're about to get started.
Test 1, 2, 3. Okay, should I just go for it?
Before we start, a few words from our host tonight at Printed Matter, Max.
Thank you. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, I just want to welcome everyone to Printed Matter. Thanks so much for coming out. I am so thrilled and honored that we can host the 50th anniversary issue of World War III. When I came to New York and started at Printed Matter in 1989, World War III had already been around for 9 years. Printed Matter preceded World War III. It was founded in 1976. We're a nonprofit arts organization, one of the leading resources in the world for artist books and related publications by artists. And we're much more than a bookstore. We sell books. We distribute about 15,000 titles internationally, and we have a full schedule of programs. We have exhibitions. We have up to 3 to 4 events a week. We founded and organized the New York and the LA Art Book Fairs, which have become the largest kind of venues for artist books and related art publications. And you can check out all of our information. You can sign on to our email list to keep abreast of all the different activities and programming and services that we have. by joining our mailing list. So, and our website has our full inventory plus a lot of other artist resources and things like that. So, yeah, wow, 50 issues, incredible. It's like really, it's amazing. I bumped into World War III shortly after I moved to New York with my cheap art collective. We actually contributed to one of the issues. I met, I forget which one it was. I have no idea. It would have been like 90, 91 or something like that.
I know we put up posters together.
And then we put up posters and stuff, and I met Sabrina and Seth and a bunch of other people and stuff like that. And I know that, and we've carried World War III for, since the beginning. Actually, at one time, Printed Matter said no more artist comics, because I think that was when kind of raw graphics took off and went into commercial distribution. But we'll always carry World War III. And now we're carrying more artist book comics, but really happy to have you all back. And I know that Seth actually did a window at Lisbon Art Street before Printed Matter moved to Soho, so it goes back a ways. So anyway, thanks so much, and congratulations, and welcome back, and I'm gonna pass it on to Sandy here. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Another round of applause for Printed Matter books. If you guys have a weekly schedule where you gotta buy groceries, add a visit to this place to your schedule. Books are never more important now than they've ever been. I mean, just look at the political situation we're in these days. This is where the sort of outpost for culture and thinking is happening. It's in bookstores, so support your local bookstore, support this place, please. So the new issue, World War III Illustrated, this is number 50, Shameless Feminists. I had a really snazzy little piece of paper together with a bunch of write-ups and bios, and somebody stole it from the table with the wine. So if you're holding on to it, pass it on to me, because I had really clever things to say, and now I'm without those clever things, unfortunately. So my intros, unfortunately, to tonight's presenters is going to be somewhat brief. But please don't take that as any indication of their importance, their preeminence, and how special they are and how crucial they were to making this historic 192-page issue. World War III, among its various distinctions, is that we really push forth and debut more new comic book artists really than any other publication of its type. For that, and for the only reason that this is probably one of the only issues coming out this year that's going to feature 192 pages of feminist comics, buy it, please. You'll see it tonight. Bring it up to the front counter. When you get it, come back to this place, buy more books, please. So, up next, Sabrina Jones, longtime editor of World War III Illustrated. She is an author of several graphic novels, Race to Incarcerate, among others. But I'll let her talk about herself, because again, I'm without my snazzy piece of paper that had this rundown of stats.
You know
Sorry
all about
that.
me,
I
Sandy.
do, but then I'm not going to know when to stop. And that's going to happen with like you, Isabella, and Jennifer, and you got to let people go home sometime. So without any further ado, Sabrina Jones, editor of World War III.
Can you hear me?
I don't get it.
No, they can't hear me. Yes. I have to use the mic. It's just like a prop, the mic, Ooh. Hi. I was going to say thank you, but everybody is saying thank you. Thank you, artists. Did anybody thank you all? Everybody who made it happen here. And very much to Printed Matter, as he said, who supported us all these years, so I don't have to say that. But this slide shows you, in particular, how World War III, the Shameless Feminists issue didn't just come out of nowhere. We have a little bit of history behind us in terms of women in comics. I'm going to tell you a little bit about World War III, women in World War III, a few other artists in this issue, and then I will have earned the right to talk about myself. So it started, the first idea to have a women's issue of World War III was Her Stories on the top left there. That was in 92 with Isabella Bannerman's cover. In the middle is a back cover from another women's issue, I think, by Fly. Is Fly in the house? Oh, no. Okay. Fly with the cover, that Garbage Goddess, and then another Isabella on the back cover of the child abuse issue. And this is my cover down here with the cursor on it. From the New World Empire during the first Gulf War, the women protesting the ban on driving in Saudi Arabia, still an issue. Female Complaints came out, our second women's issue. That was in '98. And my cover, and Lance Tooks did this gorgeous, powerful woman that, as he loves to draw them. And that was the back cover of the Bitchcraft issue that came out in 2000. When I first joined World War III, there was no email. This is how we edited an issue of World War III. Everybody got together in a room and exchanged views, often in loud voices and hard language. But I had been invited to join this magazine specifically because I had done feminist art. I was part of a feminist art collective called Carnival Knowledge. And so this was like a really different culture for me. But I found that it was very supportive also. We protested together. Oh, here we are protesting together in 2017. Now this is a Suko artwork in a freebie that we printed together with the Shadow Press to give out at the Women's March in 2017. And when founding editor Peter Cooper had a hard time, is Emily here?
No, I'm afraid.
Okay. Peter Cooper was walking up to strange women and trying to give them stuff, and they were like, excuse me, excuse me. So he had his daughter Emily hand them out, and it was, they flew out of her hands, understandably. I still have my poster ready to go out again. How many years do I have to keep bringing this poster out every January 20th? Anyway, this cover is a collaboration. I drew the main figure in the foreground. We all thought we were interpreting an idea by Paula Hewitt, who no longer recognizes her idea. And Isabella colored it and collaged in the background artwork by Fitri DK. And Sandy did the logo of Shameless Feminists. Fitri is also in our inside back cover. She is not here with us because she lives in Indonesia. She's very excited to be in World War III, and I urge you to follow her on Facebook, or because you'll see photos like these of her carving her gigantic wood block prints. So, she does big work. Here's her work being installed at the University of Nanjing, China. So she's an amazing artist. Fitri DK, check her out on social media. And she was discovered by Sue Semensky, who is here and did this, who's been contributing for some time with us. So this shameless feminist that we're profiling in this magazine, we're covering her from birth onwards. So this particular strip is by a nurse about nurses who resisted the fact that women are still arriving at hospitals in labor in shackles, even though it's been repeatedly challenged in court. This story tells how the nurses challenged it and convinced a guard to violate the orders he had been given in order to free the woman so she could give birth without shackles. Fly, who is not here but should be, is also one of our long-term contributors to World War III. And she introduces herself as a 5-year-old in the playground. This 5-year-old feminist will learn a hard lesson, which is that that first boyfriend you have, who's going to be your protector, is not always going to be there. And she's going to have to learn how to look out for herself. Emily Waters is here. Emily, wave, hi. She's a new contributor to World War III. And when she was 10 years old in this picture, biking was very liberating and gave her the mobility to go beyond the constraints of where people took her before then. And here she's learning, looking back, that biking today is still considered very controversial for women in other parts of the country. And her experience with the experience of young girls in Pakistan who were harassed and threatened and attacked for riding with their bike club and had to ride within the walls of a courtyard. Now our feminist is in middle school, and she wears her feminist t-shirt to middle school. Paula Amram Hewitt did this, and I'm not sure, because she's both a teacher and a mother, whether this represents a student or a daughter of hers. Could be either or both. But this feminist is mocked on memes for her feminism, and she just hands it right back to them.
It's our daughter.
All right, June. Catherine Arnaldi, hello, are you out there? Anyway, she is the wonderful author of Amazing True Story of a Teenage Single Mom, a classic graphic novel. And for us, she did a story that's one of the missing scenes from that story about the episode whereby she became unintentionally a teen mom, being too polite to say no. And this is Sungun McFarlane, also a new contributor, not here, she's in Baltimore. Also, it deals with unwanted attentions, or let's say an abusive relationship. Incredible drawings, I think. We're so excited to have her in the magazine. I'm not worried about her now, because the reason Sungun can't be here tonight is that she has to do a kung fu demonstration. So I think she's learned to take care of herself. Lauren Simkin-Burke is here today. Hi, Lauren. And we were in grad school together, and I have to say she was always one of the most original and intelligent artists putting their work on the wall there. And she's blushing, but she's never been in World War III before, but you may have seen her in the New York Times or various other much more important venues. We're psyched to have her here. And she is telling us that this line, this long path towards transgender inclusivity may be winding, but if it all leads us to the place where we can just pee in peace without offending anyone, we're going to stick with it. Oh, now I have to talk about myself. Oh, how embarrassing. Yeah, I went back to the drawing board here. This issue for me started when Isabel Bannerman and I went to the Feminist Zine Fest at Columbia, which is a great venue. We're going to try to get a table there. You all should apply for tables if you do zines. The deadline is December 15th. A couple years ago, it was right when all the Me Too stories were breaking, and Izzy and I went out to dinner afterwards, and I told her the story that I don't tell everyone that I always think of when I hear all the Me Too stories. And of course, she ruthlessly encouraged me to write it all down and draw it out. So here we are. The zine format was very safe for me. I mean, I'm encouraged by all those fantastic young, brave feminist women at the Zine Fest, and that intimacy of that little handheld format kind of gave me a place where I felt comfortable telling this story. And then I thought, well, I can, put 4 of these on a page, and I'll have a comic strip for World War III. And then next thing you know, the whole thing is like as big as the wall here, and so much for my intimate little format. But it talks about being a teenager, a little teenage tomboy, and how surprising it was to find that I was the object of interest by this attacker, when I thought it was people like my friend, with her great womanly body that guys were interested in. When I look back on what happened, I always think how much worse it could have been. But somebody must have called the cops, and that's when I got my lucky break. So I escaped with my virtue intact, and though the cops did not usher me to safety, as I thought, I found that reinforced my suspicion of the authorities. And I started my journey in this adult body, this adulting body, as, with a newfound sense of my allure. But the rest of the strip is about where we go from there. So check out your pages for the continuing, evolution of that sense of living in this body and all the surprises that come. I'm just going to close out with a nod to Trina Robbins. Yes. Anybody know her? If you don't know Trina, she is a pioneering underground cartoonist and also the first woman to draw Wonder Woman. And that's her on the right at a Halloween parade. And she's a fearless feminist. She will not spare your feelings if she thinks she catches a whiff of sexism, but she will definitely support young women artists, as she did when I met her. And that's what we're all trying to do here. Thank you.
Once again, another round of applause for Sabrina. I'm not used to speaking on a microphone, so this is a little weird for me. Next up is Rebecca Migdal, who's a multidisciplinary artist. She's been with World War III for many, many years. She's known for zombie punk, among other things. I'll let her fill in the rest. Round of applause, please, for Rebecca Migdal.
Thank you, Sandy. Hi. I just want to mention, if you're standing and you really need to sit, there's a seat right there. And feel free to take it, even though the show goes on. And don't be shy. So I have to figure out how. So is it all one program? So I just kind of.
The down arrow.
The down arrow. Okay. Okay. So my piece for this issue is called The Intimate Partner Violence Escape Room. From Abuse to Freedom, Survivors Tell Their Story. And I want to thank Seth Bachman for really encouraging me to do this piece, because he was working on this subject, and he was sort of like, maybe you should do this, Rebecca. And it turned out to be a really amazing thing to do, because I found that I was encountering women in my environment who had been through some really horrific things. So I'm just going to kind of jump through some of the images from the piece, but and explain what I was trying to do in the process. Oh, and I just want to acknowledge my collaborators, Sadie Rose, Jenny Chi, Jasmine Delude, and V. These are all true stories interlaced with statistics. A person from any background can become trapped in a pattern of abuse. Maybe you're disabled, homeless, mentally ill, or have an addiction. Maybe you're a doctor, college professor, judge, or engineer. Whatever your ethnicity, whatever your gender or sexual orientation, you might find yourself in a situation. You're in a troubled relationship. You tried to make it work, but your partner blames you, bullies, is unreasonably jealous or controlling. Then something happens, a thing that causes you to realize that the unthinkable is a reality. I'm in an abusive relationship. I'm in danger. I have to escape, but it won't be easy. So there's lots of statistics here, and they're all really appalling. Even though I had been in an abusive relationship and had been able to escape from it with the help of friends and family, I hadn't realized until I started working on this piece just how disturbing those statistics are. For example, the fact that domestic violence is the chief cause of injury to women, and more women are injured by intimate partner violence than by car accidents, muggings, and rapes combined. So there's statistics of death, and there's all these statistics, but really just women are getting hurt. And men are too, but above all, women are very vulnerable. So, by the way, let me just mention a little bit about the artwork. When I started working on this piece, I was initially inspired by the story of a woman friend of mine who had gone from a situation where she was, had a great job, was a very successful professional, to a situation where she was being pursued by the police, beaten, ended up actually in prison. And what she was put in prison for was for writing bad checks that she was forced to write by her husband. And she spent longer in prison than he did for almost killing her. And that shocked me so much that I felt I have to write about this, I have to tell these stories, because most women who are in prison have been abused. So, but I knew that I couldn't just do portraits of the individuals involved. First of all, it's almost an unbearable thing even to just read about it, much less to see
pictures portraying these events. So I decided that I would really stick my neck out and do something I never do, which is pictures of cute little animals. And if you're familiar with my work, you know I don't do cute animals. But I just felt like I needed to portray the characters in a way that was symbolic. And the symbolism that I wanted to develop was the predator-prey relationship, because that's really what you're talking about. You're talking about people getting trapped into a dynamic in their relationship that's not about love, but it's about power, and it's predatory. And so I wanted also to get away from the idea that it's just, women hurting men, because all genders and all gender and sexual orientations are, have the possibility of being involved in these situations. And what we need to do is reclaim our humanity and help people to reclaim their humanity from being embroiled in this kind of violence. And so there's a cute little mouse writing a note that says, "Escape plan." And each one of the animal characters in the story represents a specific person and then is paired with a specific predator. So if you track the animals, you'll see the story unfold, but I don't tell each story in a linear way. Instead, I divide them up so that they answer specific questions. How did I get into this thing? What happened that I ended up in an abusive relationship? How did I react when I figured it out? What did I do to try and get away? Did it work? What really helped? How was the law involved, and was that helpful? All these questions that I'm asking to the victims themselves, rather than depending on statistics. I wanted to really look at the people's actual experience, and that was very interesting. So here's an image about how people's family life and conditioning sets them up to accept inappropriate behavior. But some people who find themselves in an abusive relationship had a very nice family, and they weren't conditioned at all, and they were just, except for the way that society conditions us, they weren't conditioned by their family history to be abused. They were just tricked into it by somebody who acted like they were one kind of person and then turned out to be somebody completely different. And this slide is a page talking about all the ways that women are kept from escaping, especially women with children. It's very easy for them to be trapped in an abusive relationship because of the responsibility and because of the ways that children can be used to manipulate and because of their fears of what will happen if they try to leave. So I listed lying to the authorities, meaning the abuser lying to the authorities, sabotage, using children as a weapon, intimidation, controlling the money, nowhere to go, false promises, guilt, manipulation, isolation. It's really easy to believe somebody that you love when they make a promise to you, when they're sincerely sorry, and they really, really they believe what they're saying. I'll never do it again. I want you to stay. When you're in an abusive relationship, the person probably really loves you or thinks they love you. I'm studying Jungian psychology right now, so I know that actually what they love is a projection of their own anima, which is much more powerful than you. And just get away from behind that projection because it's a bad place to stand. But I didn't know that then, and even though I knew the common wisdom that when they say they're sorry, they're gonna do it again, I gave him one more chance, but only one. You know how that worked out. Also, it's easy to feel sorry for an abuser because they were probably abused. They were probably damaged. And it's not our job to save them. not at the cost of our lives, not at the cost of our safety. Somebody's in front of the, okay, there we go. So this is, by the way, the little confession, that the dove is me. So that's me just doing dishes at the sink and the guy is just looking in the window. Even when the person's not actively abusing you, the fact that they're stalking you, following you around, just examining you, trying to hold you accountable to a set of rules that you don't accept can be really terrifying. In this case, the person who had been abused had been in a long-term relationship and had a child. And when the child was born, everything changed, and he became a total bully and really controlling. And all the things that she had tolerated in the relationship for so long just got out of control. And she could no longer tolerate it. And so she wanted out, and the second she really wanted out, that's when he became violent. And she never thought that would happen, but it did. And after he hurt her, she called the police, but the police discouraged her from filing an order of protection. So she didn't, and the next day, he went down to the courthouse and filed an order of protection against her, saying that she was the abusive one and that she was trying to destroy his life by pretending that she'd been abused and that she had just fallen down and hurt herself and she was a liar, and on and on and on. And so set up this situation where she had to stay in the house for 3 months while he was behaving in a violent way because she wouldn't leave without her child. If she had left her child there, he would have been in danger, and if she had taken him, then she would have lost custody. So she had to stay in that relationship until the court told her she could leave. Not really very good way to do it. Another form of abuse is sexual abuse. And that can lead to really terrible damage. And it's the hardest kind of abuse to talk about. So I'm very fortunate that one of the people I collaborated with was willing to talk about that experience. People see one thing in the situation with an abusive relationship, whereas the reality is very different. So from the outside, it looks like the abused person is acting out. Their behavior is erratic, they're hysterical, they're screaming, they don't seem to be behaving logically. The abuser often behaves like everything's perfectly normal. The problem is this other person is just unhinged. But in fact, they're being devoured alive. But there's always a phone call away, there's always help. And that's really important. It's really important to make sure if you know anybody in this kind of situation, or if you're in this kind of situation, to just make that call. Because there is help and support. There's emergency help a little bit on a longer term basis. It's harder because you have to find a place to live. And if you have children, you may be in a very difficult situation financially. And that's, I think, where the community comes in. The reason I was able to escape from an abusive relationship was because of friends like Carlo, for example, who really stuck up for me when Carl was trying to come after me at a World War III event just like this. He was like, "Rah," and Carlo was like, "You can't be like that here." So he rode off on his bicycle and had a bike accident just to punish himself for... It was a strange situation. Anyway, but for other people, sometimes even being in prison can be a place where you find the solidarity and the support. But what really helps is having other women or other people who have been in the same situation to bond with and to talk to. And above all, a place to stay. So if you have a spare room or a couch in your home, and you make it available to somebody who's escaping an abusive relationship, even temporarily, you might be saving somebody's life. Having somebody to talk to, comics. Mass says comics helped. writing about it yourself, really documenting what happened to you. One of the most painful things about an abusive relationship is that your vision of reality is being contradicted by somebody who has a completely other vision, which has been revised to justify their behavior. And it's basically being gaslighted. And it can be very unsettling, especially when people on the outside don't see what's really happening. So you need to write things down, you need to record everything. Having friends, educating yourself, doing martial arts and yoga, especially if you've been sexually abused or if you have had physical abuse, taking control of your body through physical disciplines is really important and very healing. I don't think that anybody in this book really kicked somebody, at least not their abuser. But I thought it would be fun to draw a picture of it, and I figured Seth would like it. So that's my presentation, and I just want to say one more thing. If you're being abused, it doesn't mean that you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that you're incapable of transformation. It means that you're stuck in a dangerous pattern, one that you may need some help to get out of. So for communities to help, to be a moral support, to be a literal physical support, is the most important thing we can do, because the legal system, unfortunately, does not provide that kind of support. The legal system only really knows how to put people in prison. That's the only way they know how to fix anything. So communities have to step up and provide the middle ground, which is where people get options that don't involve calling the law, or if they do, in such a way so that the victim of abuse is not also criminalized. And that's it. Thank you.
Another round of applause for Rebecca. Backstory and many others in the current issue. Buy it, please. Here it is. And I did find my bio so I can give Jennifer Camper a proper introduction. Because that would have just been embarrassing. I'm a big fan of Jennifer.
There's a couple of chairs up front here, if anybody wants to sneak around the column or either way.
Or come around this way?
Yeah, it might be easier to come around the other way.
Okay, Jennifer Camper is a cartoonist and graphic artist living in New York City. Her art examines life from a perspective that is irreverent, female, queer, and mongrel, Lebanese American. Her work often explores gender, race, class, and politics, as well as sexuality, mermaids, and robots. She is also a cartoon editor, a teacher, and the creator of the biennial Queers in Comics Conference. Her books include Rude Girls and Dangerous Women, a collection of her cartoons, and Subgirls, a graphic novella following the adventures of three women living in abandoned subway tunnels. She also edited 2 Juicy Mother Comics anthologies. Her cartoons and illustrations have appeared in numerous publications, including World War III Illustrated, and have been exhibited internationally. Please welcome Jennifer Camper.
Thank you all for being here, and thank everyone who put together this amazing book. This is like so much juicy goodness. I can't wait to dive in. Let's look at some comics. This is my comic called A Slow Intermittent Leak. This is an excerpt from the longer piece that's in the collection. On Saturday, while Rhonda was cleaning her bathroom, she noticed a slow, intermittent leak from under the sink. She stuck a bucket under the pipe. Then she saw the box of tampons. It was over half full. She'd always noted her periods with a small star on her calendar. Her last one had been 10 months ago. Had that been her final one? The beginning of menstruation is noticed. It comes as a surprise. First periods are remembered. The last period is usually insignificant when it happens. It's only remarkable months later, made important by its future absence. She hadn't mourned the change. She joked that the money she used to spend on tampons, she was now spent on marijuana and mamul. But what should she do with the last box? Burn it in a ritualistic ceremony? Give it to her niece when she started menstruating. Then a whole bunch of other stuff happens, and she ends up going to her nearby diner. And she hears these guys in the next booth. I can't believe that motherfucker put up such a fight. Yeah, what a tough bastard. She often eavesdropped on nearby conversations. I was surprised that the boss wanted to get rid of him. Maybe he was stealing. People paid no attention to older women. I heard he fucked the boss's mistress. No shit. She liked to imagine the lives these people lived. Who knows really? Hell, we get paid not to ask questions. Right, but there was so much blood. Usually the talk in the diner was mundane and boring. Yeah, he was a fucking fountain. I hate cleaning up those little globs. They get into everything. But occasionally she overheard more intriguing conversations. We should get paid extra for those globs. Yeah, right? And then some teenagers walk in. I'm getting large fries and chocolate cake and onion rings. Breakfast of champions. Anyone got a tampon? You on the rag again? Ha! Shark Week, Crimson Tide. Yeah, this period is like a fucking river. You got those bloody chunks? Chunks, I get those sometimes. Geez, my periods are gushers. Mine too. I could bleed a tsunami. We got those waterfall pussies. Shut the fuck up. People are trying to eat here. You brats are fucking disgusting. Goddamn sick little bitches, nasty sluts. Don't make me laugh, I'm gushing. I'll bleed wherever the fuck I want to. We're gonna flood those motherfuckers. Feel the flow, assholes. Rhonda thought about those girls while she walked home. And this next comic, this is an interactive comic, and I want you all to scream out whether you think these are situations that are feminist or not. Is pink a feminist color? Is feminist or not a pop star in lingerie singing about female empowerment while twerking? A female billionaire. Becoming a female billionaire while selling underclothing designed to reshape women's bodies. The woman who invented Spanx was one of the first female billionaires. Pink power tools, feminist or not. First female firefighter in town who says, I'm no feminist, I just need a job. Lipstick with assertive names. A female senator against abortion, feminist or not. Women smoking in the 1920s, feminist or not. Thongs and push-up bras with pro-female slogans. Female serial killers, feminist or not.
Who are they killing?
Whoops.
They kill them.
And all feminists start somewhere, and this is an excerpt from a comic I did called Schoolgirls. The big kid who beat up all the boys, she took everyone's lunch money. A really good artist could draw robots and animals and nasty pictures of the teachers naked. Kleptomaniac stole candy, comics, and blue nail polish, dreamed of one day hot wiring a fast car. Ran away 3 times in 1 year. The 4th time, she never came back. Quiet, dressed only in black, muttered to herself all the time, smelled musty. The smartest one in school, read constantly, knew everything, merely tolerated the rest of the world. Thank you.
Again, another round of applause for Jennifer Camper. Next up is Isabella Bannerman. Isabella started out painting backdrops and props for Pee-wee's Playhouse. She continued working in the field of animation and directing station identification spots for MTV and working on the TV show.
Did you say something to me?
Doug?
Kick me again.
Oh my God, my eyesight. I'm sorry, guys. I was
Oh,
like,
he keeps
Doug.
kicking me.
TV show Doug.
body?
I know that show. I used to watch it. Her cartoons have been in many publications, including Glamour, The New York Times,
the
The Funny
content you're
Times,
right now?
and World War III Illustrated. Isabella has been writing and drawing the Monday comic for the internationally syndicated comic strip Six
Control
Chicks.
my child.
Six Chicks. Is it Six Chicks? Six Chicks? I'm sorry, folks. Since 2000. Please welcome Isabella Bannerman.
Thank you, Sandy, and thanks to Matt, to everybody here at Printed Matter for hosting us. Really appreciate it. And where are we going? So yeah, we're a big crowd tonight, so we're going to find out how many of us are shameless feminists. And some people don't want to call themselves feminists, so she says, I'm not really a feminist. So okay, that's fine. So can I have your car keys, your job, the title to your house, your birth control pills, your voter ID card, your sports equipment, and your comfortable shoes? All these things that were won for us by people who came before us. You might be one if you, maybe I should fix the projector so that you can see the full slide. Yeah, so this is a scene from the piece I have in this issue. You might be a shameless feminist if, like my mom, Franca Bannerman, you fight fascism. And here she is hiding from the soldiers who came into town and took all the groceries, and anything left to eat in town was gone in a couple hours when they came through. Or if, like Llewellyn, you did, in fact, grow out to be a magical fighter girl. You could be a shameless feminist if, like Ellen Lindner and Joanne Stirrer, you root for female athletes. And I think we have Ellen Lindner in the house. And Joanne, there you go. If you're interested in female wrestling, we have a piece in this issue for you. You might be a shameless feminist if, like Jenny Gonzalez Blitz, you were unashamed to admit that you were raped and that you tried to warn us about Trump. Jenny's here, I think. Yes, Jenny. You might be a shameless feminist if, like Susan Wilmarth, you believe Dr. Christine Blasey Ford. You might be a shameless feminist if, like Carly Schuster, you were inspired by the art and activism of Yoko Ono. You might even be a shameless feminist if, like the character in Sandy Jimenez's story, you are just doing your best to keep your business going. Right, Sandy?
Do not touch people without their permission.
You could be a shameless feminist if you're a bit of a night owl, like Lance Tooks' character Deliria. Or you could even be a shameless feminist simply because, like M.K. Serwitz, you want to see women represented at conventions, symposiums, and panel discussions. And this is a little trick that M.K. uses wherever she is. If she doesn't see women represented on a panel or anywhere else she is, she raises her hands and says, "Where are the women?" You could be a shameless feminist like Monica Johnson, who just wants to be able to sit down in the subway when she's pregnant. You could be a shameless feminist like Tamara Tornado and Jenny Brown, who believe that the USA should provide workers with paid family leave. Whoops, sorry, there. You could be a shameless feminist if, like Jessica Sturtevant, you believe women should be able to breastfeed wherever they want.
Yeah.
Or you could be a shameless feminist like Lauren Weinstein, who examines the intersection of being a mother and an artist. Maybe you're a shameless feminist like Peter Cooper, who understands that discrimination against women goes way back. In this cartoon you say, if she floats, she's a witch. If she sinks, maybe she had a point about women's rights. You could be a shameless feminist like Teresa Cherubini, simply for reclaiming your humanity. Or you could be a shameless feminist like Regina Silvers, who can't believe she still has to protest this shit. And Regina is still And Shameless Feminists would like to thank our sponsors, Abrams Comic Books, AK Press, Booklyn, Stanley Cohen, Mayday Space, Seth Bachman, Max Fish, Rebecca Migdal, the Minerva Center for Figure Drawing, the Museum of Reclaimed Urban Space, PM Press, Sabrina Land, Sane Energy Project, Verso Books, and of course, Printed Matter for hosting us. And we're around, Jennifer, Sabrina, Rebecca, Sandy, we can answer a few questions if anybody has questions.
We can do it right from here. If you guys can come up, where are we missing? Rebecca.
Stop shining the light
And thanks everybody for coming out.
Yeah, thank you for coming out tonight. This is a great showing of support for the magazine. We really appreciate it. Before I continue, I just want to acknowledge our two founders are here tonight, Peter Cooper and Seth Bachman, who set this in motion a very long time ago. For my part, I started with this magazine when I was 25. I'm 51 now, so I don't know. Thanks. So let's do a Q&A, and we can start with all the folks here, but many of the artists are here in the crowd, so if you guys have been thumbing through tonight's copy and saw something that caught your eye, you know, let us know, shout it out, and we'll try and see if we can find one of the artists here to answer that question. So anyone got any questions for tonight's artists? Anyone?
I'm just glad Jenny's here. I personally, I'm just glad Jenny's here.
Very good, me too. Hi, Jenny.
So we made everything perfectly clear.
That's fine.
Nothing controversial tonight at all?
That's fine.
Well, I think one of the things that, just looking through briefly, one of the things that really struck me was how many of these issues we've been fighting for the same number of years, and that this publication has been going on longer. And I wonder, I mean, I feel like all of us have drawn a lot of these kinds of frustrated and angry and kinds of cartoons, and how do we keep doing that kind of art without burning out in despair?
I mean, to Jennifer's point, these are issues from just like decades ago. So this has been, you know, a nonstop battle for these artists on stage, and they keep evolving new stories to sort of answer these issues. Clearly, no one could have foreseen the insanity that we're living through as a country right now. A lot of these stories speak to that.
So yeah, in other words, he's saying there are back issues over there that you can see. If you haven't found your way around the corner, we have a random selection, but especially some of the women's issues that came earlier. In answering Jen's question earlier, I mean, for me, I've discovered as an artist over the years that I'd rather draw what I'm for than what I'm against. You know, so that's how I keep going in this kind of thing. You know, doing books about, you know, Margaret Sanger and Isadora Duncan and the labor movement, you know. So that's been part of it, and doing, you know, magazines like this that champion women's voices is finding the positive side of our troubles. But I mean, there are great artists like Sue Ko who just like seem to like love to draw the enemy, you know, and they get all excited and fired up. I can't live there for too long, so that's all about finding out what kind of artist you are and what, you know, what fuels you to keep going. I don't know. You draw the enemy or the friend?
I just, what Rebecca really said earlier about finding community is what resonated with me the most. That yes, it's sad to realize that a lot of things that we wanted to achieve decades ago, we still have a ways to go, but in the meantime, to draw so much strength from this community and so much encouragement has really kept me going, and appreciated that you mentioned that in your.
Thanks. Well, that piece was kind of a departure for me, and definitely harder to do than some of the other pieces because it involved some of the things that were the most sensitive for me. But really, what drove me through it and got me through it was knowing that it was so empowering, not just for me, but for the other women whose voices I was amplifying. To actually be heard is part of the therapy that we need in order to get better. And that's why this issue is so important, because what we're at at this moment where we're at in our society is really a moment where women's voices are starting to be heard in a way that they weren't heard before, and we've got to keep that going because it's not even at 50% yet, and we need to get to 80 before it starts to even out, man.
Did I understand the question?
Yeah, I think Tamara has a question. Tamara?
Yeah, Jen, I had.
Wait, is the question if we're drawing the friends or the enemies, or?
The question is, what is it like to to work on stuff that could be so upsetting, right?
Well, and how do we keep going?
How do we keep going?
Fighting these issues? We haven't won all the battles yet.
Well, as far as drawing that kind of stuff, I just always refer back to a quote by one of my favorite Cubana artists, Ana Mendieta. She once said that for her, it was a choice between becoming an artist or becoming a criminal. And when it comes to drawing the enemy and drawing the stuff that upsets us and, you know, vomiting it through the pen out onto the page and processing it that way, that quote just always stuck with me, and that's a choice. As an artist, I feel I'm not just here to make people feel happy and safe. I'm drawing, whether it's drawing the friends, drawing the enemies, drawing the friends in the ether that are just providing me sustenance, or drawing what's terrifying me the most. It's just to show people a part of the world that that corporate art would just want us to look away from. Okay, so was there another question, Tamara or somebody?
Well, now I don't know if I want to. My comic, I had both sides. I had the woman from the United States who's in a crappy situation, and the woman from the Czech Republic who's in a much better situation. So I have both in my comic.
That was in supporting of childbirth and mothering, yeah.
In support of parents, especially women, getting more support, free child care and other support. I wanted to ask, this is a bigger, thicker issue, like almost 200 pages. Does that mean that you've got more submissions than usual? Or why is this bit like, and if you got more submissions, does that mean that this is a topic that's really speaking to people now, or?
I think part of just to be the person who likes to look at the bright side, like the last time when we first started doing women's issues in Radical Comics, it was hard to find a lot of women contributors. I mean, half of the Her Stories issue is by men, at least, So to find, this issue only has a couple of guys in it. It's mostly women, and it's like there's so many more women in comics, and so I was thinking of all these ways we would do outreach and try to find them, but boom, we found them before we had to do much outreach. And so, yeah, it filled up fast, and I guess we had enough money from our last issue that we could afford to print this many, because that's how it works, we make just enough to print the next one, So in the world of feminist comics, things may be a little better than in other parts of the world.
And to this editorial staff's credit, I tried to bow out at so did Lance Tooks, but they wouldn't let us. So much for that, overwhelming chauvinist fear that if women take power, men are going to be like thrown out the door. They put us to work anyway.
We started out with 6 editors. Sandy wouldn't be an editor because it was inappropriate for a man, according to him. So he wanted to be an assistant editor. But after 2 of our editors, female editors, succumbed to the forces of life and were not able to continue, we gave him a promotion because he did a lot of work.
Sometimes a promotion just looks like a lot more work.
Yeah.
I have a question for you guys, just as your colleague. All of you guys are painters. You make puppets. Jenny does all kinds of, sort of poster art. you guys all work in different disciplines and come from different disciplines. Why comics? Why comics still?
I think that they're as engaging to work on as they are to read, you know, that sort of getting from one panel to the next. I just got hooked on the rhythm. That's a format that works for me, you know, that it's like, how do I figure out where to go from here?
I used to do a lot of different art forms, but I mean, my basic need is to have storytelling, and I like working with words and pictures. But what got me into comics at the beginning was the fact that there were very few gatekeepers. And the kinds of stories I was telling were not going to be published by mainstream publishers. They weren't going to get into museums. You know, it was, you know, dyke noir, basically. And nobody was really ready for that. So comics is a place where you can tell pretty much whatever story you want. I mean, and the reason is there's no money in it. There's very little glory, and it's a real down and dirty art form. You know, so there's that payoff.
I definitely second those emotions. Absolutely.
I keep trying to escape. But then there's another issue of World War III, and I'm like, okay, I gotta say things to say, and it's such a great medium. I think one of the most powerful things about comics is that it's accessible to a broader range of people from different socioeconomic backgrounds. We've even done a wordless issue that could be read by people no matter what language they speak. And I think that the visuals are really a compelling aspect of its accessibility to a lot of people. And also, the print format it's still alive, and it you know, when all the sunspots destroy the infrastructure, World War III will still be there.
I like cartoons and comics. I do them because I like them. I don't have a profound answer for you about graphic narrative or underappreciated art forms. I could go on about that, but you know, there's forums online where people wax poetic about that all day long. So, you know, I like comics. I like underground comics. And
but like Jenny, specifically like versus your music, like you do so many other things, like.
Yeah. Me and my husband collaborate on experimental music. I've been making weird little videos with my phone, and I've been studying Buto, and those are all different art forms. I could talk about the merits of each one, but I think they've all been coming together for me, and honestly, I think they've all been, and painting, yeah, I mean, I think they all kind of have been enriching each other, and even, I think they've all sort of been feeding into my comics work too. I mean, not that I've done comics about those things specifically, but just how I tell stories and how I present things as opposed to how I used to just, like, my latest piece in here, it's kind of more broken apart, fragmented, is just kind of a stream of consciousness about all this horror facing us and this reality that we have now that's, you know, my doctors, how can they call me paranoid anymore? I can just pull up an article at any given time going, oh yeah, see? So it's just, it's another art form that I find very beautiful in its own right. This, you know, there's something about cartoons and comics that are just very, you know, people call them simplistic or childish, yet they're so urgent and expressive. I believe, yeah.
You had a follow-up question?
I had a follow-up question, which was related to why are you still doing cartoons, but you've answered that, and I just wanted to say, were you doing, I mean, for me, cartoons and comics, aside from trips to the museum, was the art I saw as a kid. And I think that may be the same for everyone in the room, or most people in the world. I mean, Mad Magazine and other things. But, same for you?
Yeah.
Yeah, nodding history, the nodding.
I loved Mad Magazine.
Yeah, I was a big fan of Mad and heavy metal before it got too gross. But I also think that this idea that artists or creative people do one thing is a myth. That all creative people are creative in all the things that they do, and we're all creative. So, the idea that you do one thing is just a function of the commodification of the product rather than of the actual process.
Can I just say something? Okay, I'm just gonna say it. Brands are for types of beer. I cannot deal, I can't with this whole thing of calling people brands and building your brand and all. I mean,
Is there another question?
Slap a barcode on yourself.
Yes, I thought it would be interesting to hear Regina Silver's talk about her piece in the magazine that had to do with the grannies, older women. So.
Question for Regina. Okay.
Okay, well,
But we do have half an hour to drink the rest of the beer. So.
very quickly, I became a follower of the Grand Peace Brigade. A friend of mine was one of the women arrested when they tried to enlist at the recruitment station so that their kids and their grandkids wouldn't have to be deployed in Iraq. And I followed the grannies, and they're strong women, and they don't show anger, they teach. They really, really give out the message about war and peace and educating people, and I really found that very encouraging. And it affected me in that my art then became documenting the grannies and what they did in my paintings. So it all came together. I marched, I photographed, and I painted, and then I ended up telling the story in my section of the book. So it's like all of a piece, and the grannies are an amazing group. You really should look at them on their website, grannypeacebrigade.org. they go up into the late 90s. There are people there who have been famous activists and then very much younger people. And it's a great group.
Thank you, Regina. So there's still things to eat and drink, and comic books, new and old, and all the other things.
You were in Doll Hospital, weren't you? Yes. Yeah, because you made it out. But yeah, I mean, yeah, the puppets. That's one thing that it makes my blood boil when someone sees something that they feel I do well. Like, you should just do that. I'm like, you want me to chop off an arm? I mean, I need both legs to walk.
Well, I do miss Doll Hospital, though. That was really fun.
I booked you for my friend Chris's birthday.
Yes.
Down when I was doing the basement of the pyramid.
I remember that, yeah.
And
that was so much fun.
He was like, he walked up to me and said that you scared him.
You scared them.
And I'm like, well, I've known him since '83. And you know somebody that well, you don't give someone like flowers or whatever. You give them a present that scares them.
That's right. If you're not a little scared, you're not having a true experience.
Exactly. But yeah, I really appreciate when you use the phrase vomiting it through the pen. Because really that's what it's purgative. I mean, just to see it outside of yourself instead of feeling it inside of yourself. To draw it out like that. It's like opening a wound and letting the fresh air get in.
Yeah, when you draw stuff that's upsetting you, it's just
it's like my lyrics and like all the stuff in my comics, whatever.
And when you're drawing a political comic, you can't just draw stuff that you're happy about because, I mean...
Yeah, because then it's like, you know, oh goody, you get pat on the back, but it doesn't really do, there's no movement, no motion. I mean, I see something like, you know, even the things like you do in like notepads and whatnot, they're even when you do something that's supposed to be like real, like it's a portrait that has all like this light and like energy and like, still in that, there's like a visceral feeling to it. Like it's communicative. You know, it's not just like, you know, like jerking off on stage or whatever. It's like, you know, more like ripping your guts out. All right, this is it. This is true, and that's one of the things I'm really. Anyway. So I asked the woman over there whose son kept kicking me.
Really?
Well, she's like, she was offered a seat, but she's like, oh, this is fine. She sat right by my feet, and the kid keeps kicking me. So I looked over to.
How old is the kid?
8-ish. I don't know, this young boy or whatnot. You know, he was like thumbing through the book or looking at her phone or whatever he was doing. And he kept kicking me. So like, excuse me, can you control your child? She's like, do you know what context you're in? Get this asshole out of here.
Well, how about whatever context? I mean, having your seat kicked is unpleasant.
And I mean, you know, it's like, well, he's a child. Well, when I was a child at that age, I had self-respect. I was horrendously abused, but I also had self-respect, and I would not turn.
What if a woman had asked the same question?
Right. So I must be the oppressor because I'm documenting the event, and obviously I must know people here. But since I have this thing dangling between my legs, I'm obviously the enemy. So I must be thwarted at all costs. And so she like mugged at me. She tried to get my attention, goaded me into a confrontation, and I wouldn't take the bait, so she left.
I wonder if...
And she said, "You are now child-free," which is when I turned to her and said,
"Aren't you anyway?"
5 children. You are now child-free. She pats me, and I'm like, never touch anyone without their permission. You just slinked away into the darkness.
Yeah, I wonder if you like worded it and like, could you please ask, you know, could you please have your child stop invading my space with kicking my seat?
Well, I also called her son it a couple of times.
Okay, well,
it's doing it again.
I could see where anybody might object to that.
But then again, I mean, you know, you're not paying attention to the behavior of your offspring, which your offspring is causing a disruption in a public space.
I mean, what if you had fibromyalgia or arthritis or something?
I do have low blood sugar, and I do as a system of that deal with constant fibromyalgia.
But I'm talking about these nerve diseases.
Where even touching someone can be painful.
Kicking a seat can be like really debilitating.
I've had close friends who could not bear to be touched.
Yeah.
So I mean that
kicking the seat creates
kicking me, not just the seat, but kicking me.
Oh, that's.
You know, and it happened like 4 times, and she just turned a blind eye to everything other than my reaction. And you know, like the same thing, like one of the artists like the dress. If you're reacting to something being done to you, you're somehow bad. You should just clam up.
In my opinion, that's not feminism. That's just inconsiderate. I mean, the person could have any kind of injury.
Still, I am glad that you did make it out. You know,
just even without it, it's just rude. I mean, it's like children need to be taught by adults.
Right. And not by strangers.
Kicking someone is rude. It's mean. It hurts. It can hurt.
Well, it's invasive, and also what kind of young man are you raising? Maybe she should realize the context she's in, and think that a future man who believes that he can violate other people's personal space without it being even noticed.
You're teaching him not to respect boundaries, and that's toxic masculinity.
There you go. That's what you're teaching your son.
Yes.
You know, I mean, she could have very well asked us, well, what did he do?
I tabled next to you.
Anyway, you have your public to deal with, so I shall.
Probably do, but that's what I was thinking, doing the knife and then the worst thing you do is just drink fork. That's crazy. No, the lid is not plastic, so then you can with the lady. Let me try to see if I can. Just be careful. Slowly. You just can do the peel it out. It's like excavation. The patient technique. So. Who's collecting the money for the...
I believe if you take it to the front counter,
Yes,
you can check
you can get it
out
around
there.
up front.
Yeah.
They're 15.
Smart, please.
Yes, $15 for 192 pages.
So the ones in the box underneath are
Yeah, not the ones on the top two. Hey, Fran. How many do you need?
How many do I need? I think I should take 5 for tomorrow night, but get in touch with you. Yeah.
She was skipping.
And what, actually 6 because I want my
Such a very
Sorry about that.
Wonderful. And that will start out with people.
Yeah, to announce, we're gonna, you need to ask, oh, you didn't make it. No, oh.
No, not for my sister to die, but for it to get old enough that I don't feel like I'm gonna get it. But it was just very weird. It's like people who I've noticed is over people who you say the worst things about, like what you're seeing.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
People who are hyper.
Thanks.
You should be ready to go now. $30. You want back to you?
Are there any sort of guidelines of having things carried here?
Carried here? Yeah, we have a submission process. All that's outlined online. And so,
Because from 1982 to 1994, I was writing an underground comic called Sick World. It was a post-apocalyptic comic book. And finally, I novelized and self-published it.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
And
yeah, so I don't do any of the submissions.
Yeah.
Like basically, if you want to drop off a sample, you can do
definitely.
that. Or if you look on our website, it'll outline what we expect. Like,
I might stop by because it's much easier seen than explained.
Yeah, for sure.
Because what happened was it's 556 pages, so a little over 300 pages of that is the novelization of the comic, and then I have over 350 illustrations of characters, mutant races, weapons, and vehicles. Basically, it's way in the future. Reality has been completely torn asunder, and there are these three enemies turned compatriots who are ripped out of this earth, or their earth actually, at the beginning of World War III and thrown into this like hyper, I mean, I had one friend compare it to willfully having a nervous breakdown reading this book. And there are like multiple interlacing storylines. It's, you know, but I might just stop by. I would have thought to have one on me, but I really just wanted to see the event and see, you know, because I know a couple of artists who are featured and whatnot.
Yeah, we're open 7 days a week. Just stop in with it.
Definitely, definitely.
Just Monday through Friday, the manager's here, so.
Okay. I made the mistake of going up on the High Line thing.
Oh yeah, don't do that.
Because
never get down.
I know. Like, you know, I didn't go down one staircase because it was way too far north.
Yeah.
But then there wasn't another staircase until 23rd Street, and it's crowded by people walking like this.
It's the New York way.
Anyway, all right, yeah. Chances are you will see me again, or somebody will see me again. Thanks, man.